And I'm sorry for anyone that heard the news about David first this morning. I want to assure you that David was not alone. Reverend Bonnie Rice, who used to be a minister here, has known David for many years, lives in Albuquerque and was able to be with him when he passed. So he was not alone. He had somebody that he knew and loved with him. So we're so grateful to Reverend Bonnie Rice for being there. And I know some people get us confused. She's the Bonnie with a Y, I'm the Bonnie with an IE, because I had people thanking me. It was Bonnie Rice who was there. And thanks to the Baileys for keeping us informed. And he had some good friends that were able to visit him. So we just thank you all for holding him in prayer, and we just know he's released right now to his highest and next expression. I'll be ending today, before we move into prayer, with something that I found to read in his honor, but we'll save that for later. So I am Reverend Bonnie Smith, and it is my pleasure to be here as your community spiritual leader this morning as we move into a new month. And this month, our focus is on perfect action, no mistakes. And that was actually the title of the little short chapter that Cheryl read for you this morning. And in that, we heard him say, no mistakes have been made, none are being made, and none can be made. And then a few sentences later, he says, it is not that we have made no mistakes, but if the belief in the necessity of mistakes stays in our consciousness, then there is bound to be repetition. So that sounds a little contradictory. There are no mistakes. Well, it's not that we haven't made any mistakes. And then what's very interesting to me is if you look through the Science of Mind text, he has several places where he explains to us what mistakes are. One of those is that limitation is a mistake. Another one, any idea of using the will to influence people is a mistake. That's when he's talking about treatment. When we do treatment, we're not trying to change them, we're changing ourselves and our own thinking. He says, if our subjective consciousness were always clear, if it never received false impressions, the spirit would always flow to the point of objectivity, and we would never make mistakes, would never be sick, poor, or unhappy. That is all one sentence. I didn't take anything out. So we can assume that he thinks then to be sick, poor, or unhappy is a mistake. And then he continues by saying, the very force which makes us sick can heal us. The force which makes us poor can enrich us. And the power which makes us miserable can make us happy. And then in another section of the Science of Mind text, he's talking about sin, which we don't talk about much, but this is what he says about sin. We wish to make clear that there is no sin but a mistake, and no punishment but an inevitable consequence. Try and say that. Wrongdoing must be punished, for the law of cause and effect must be eternally operative. Right acts are rewarded in the same way. We do not say that man cannot sin. What we say is that he does sin or make mistakes. And he put that in there, or make mistakes. And he is thereby automatically punished as long as he continues to make mistakes. And that part is all in capital letters. But bondage is not real to the universe, and sin is not real to God. This does not mean that we can do whatever we wish with disregard for the consequences, nor does the fact that we are punished for our mistakes mean that there is an evil power in the universe. It does mean that there is an immutable law of cause and effect running through everything. We are not punished for our sins, but by our sins. Sin is its own punishment, and righteousness its own reward. And he has one other that I'm going to mention, and that is that self-condemnation is always destructive and should never be indulged in by anyone. It is always a mistake. Self-condemnation. There's no question but that all of us have done that which is not for the best. From this viewpoint, all have been sinners because all have fallen short of the divine calling. If we have sinned, it is because we have been ignorant of our true nature and because experience was necessary to bring us to ourselves. Wow. So for this concept that we hear often, there are no mistakes, Holmes has outlined quite a few things that he calls mistakes. And so I want to go back to that idea of sin being a mistake. That comes from the idea that the original word for sin that we translated to sin was a word used for archery when you were aiming for the target and you missed the mark. So the idea is not so much sin as it's come to be interpreted in our race consciousness today, but the idea that you've aimed for the target and missed the mark or made a mistake. Not quite hit that divine purpose that you have for you, whatever that is, whatever you see as your divine purpose. And so, as usual, Spirit tends to work in very interesting ways, because I had started working on this concept and thinking about this idea of hitting a mark and that term that comes from using a bow and arrow before many of us saw the news about the lion in Africa, Cecil, who was killed by a very skilled marksman, a man that used a bow and arrow. And I thought, well, I can't possibly use this analogy anymore. And then I realized that's what Holmes was talking about when he said in the very beginning that that force which makes us sick can also heal us. That force that makes us poor can enrich us, and that power which makes us miserable can make us happy. That power and that force is ours to use, and we use it in some ways that we consider evil or bad, and we also use it for what we consider good or positive things. It's the same power. So what is that power that we're talking about? If I were to ask you right now to take a bow and arrow or a dart, or hopefully something with a suction cup on the end, or another ball, and throw it to hit this one, how many of you would hit it right now? Nobody? Am I in danger? Okay. So what do you require in order to be able to hit this? Experience? What else? Skill? Huh? Practice. Focus. Focus and? Concentration. Confidence. Practice. Yeah, I'd want you to practice a lot before I'd stand here and hold this. But there is something else, and I heard somebody touch on it. Will. Exactly. How many of you really want to be able to hit this with a bow and arrow or something? Anybody? Does it matter? So what we hit, that thing that we actually get with our focus and our intention, is only that which we really want to. We have to have that desire before the practice and the focus is going to do anything for us. That desire is behind what makes someone a good marksman on whatever the target is. And so why is it then that some people seem to want to use this power for what we might call evil? And why do some people use it for what we might call good? A couple weeks ago, I think I shared this before, I was gifted this book called Strength to Love, Martin Luther King Jr., and it's transcripts of some of his talks. So I hope that all of us know what was happening in his lifetime, and so what he was speaking to in his talks. And in here, he addresses this question. And so I found his answer to the question also very interesting. But why is God so slow in conquering the forces of evil? Why did God permit Hitler to kill 6 million Jews? Why did God permit slavery to continue in America for 240 years? And he goes on to list, why did God let this happen, this happen, this happen? Why does not God break in and smash the evil schemes of wicked people? I do not pretend to understand all the ways of God or his particular timetable for grappling with evil. Perhaps if God dealt with evil in the overbearing way that we wish, he would defeat his ultimate purpose. We are responsible human beings, not blind automatons, persons, not puppets. By endowing us with freedom, God relinquished a measure of its own sovereignty and impose certain limitations upon itself. If his children are free, we must do his will by a voluntary choice. Therefore, God cannot at the same time impose his will upon his children and also maintain his purpose for mankind. Interesting idea, isn't it? So I came to recognize through reading that there is a difference between divine will and divine allowing. Essentially, as we hold up this target of something that we want to be or experience or see in the world, when we miss that mark, we've been allowed to miss that mark. Just like we might allow our children to make some mistakes in order for them to learn. And in some ways, it's the target itself that's missed the mark from maybe what we might consider the divine idea for us or our divine purpose. And I would also suggest that what does show up is what we've practiced. Sometimes we've gotten really good at hitting a mark, but it might not be providing for us the end result that we thought it would. So what we've practiced then is what shows up. And so I have shared here several times my lesson, my big lesson about being right. This is my bone. I'm right to hold on to it, and I am not going to change. So this was my target. I thought this was a great symbol, that, you know, how dogs just won't let go. Mine was being right. Maybe you have another target that you've spent a lot of time and energy holding up, practice focusing on, and that you're really good at hitting. So as I was practicing hitting being right on the mark all the time, I was defending my rightness. I think they're going out for food issues. Those are the two food people. I kept focusing on being right, and what ended up happening when I did that is I was creating wrongness in the people that I was at odds with. So we lost our connection. We weren't connected anymore. And as that wrongness continued, as I kept practicing hitting this mark, I became disconnected, not just from them, but from others. And I discovered I really wasn't as happy as I thought I was going to be by being right. And so when it was suggested to me that maybe I want to substitute being right with something else, like being happy, did you love my little heart? I needed to substitute what I was aiming for. Now that was hard in the beginning because to me the two went together. My happiness was contingent on my being right. But as I started questioning what is it that makes me happy, I realized that what really made me happy was connecting with other people. Not disconnecting from them, was having that connection and experiencing win-win type situations. And so I worked really hard at switching what I was aiming for. Now, do you think it's easy to switch? When I've practiced this my whole life, is it easy to switch and start aiming for this? So then what does it take? Huh? Will. Right. First of all, I have to desire this more than this, which sometimes maybe I don't. The will has to be there, and then what? Surrender. Intention. Practice and focus. That's when the focus on the new thing that I want has to, so instead of focusing on the target over here, I have to start focusing on something different, something new that I want. Now, if I were to take this ball and say I'm going to throw it at Leslie, but I decide to throw this way, am I going to hit Leslie? No. Oh, nope, I wasn't. Because I'm looking behind me, right? And if I'm going to try and have you hold the ball and I'm going to shoot that bow and arrow, but I'm going to keep looking behind me, are you going to hold the ball? No. If I'm driving from here to somewhere else, but I'm looking in the rearview mirror the whole time, how likely am I going to be to arrive there? So as we look behind us into the past, as we say, well, I'm used to this, or it used to be this way, what came to me is we're stuck in used today. You like that word? We're stuck there. We're focused in the rearview mirror. We're looking behind us as we're trying to shift targets. Or maybe I'm still looking at this target while I'm trying to aim at this one and I'm still not going to hit it. And then the other thing that we end up doing sometimes is going within ourselves and saying, oh, I was so bad for focusing on this all this time. I've wasted all this time. Why have I done this in my whole life? And right there is that mistake that Holmes talked about, self-condemnation. And as we repeat the mistakes, that's what he said was the actual sin. If we keep doing it over and over and over, we keep punishing ourselves through the very thing that we're doing. And so as we shift our focus, we need to practice then and ask ourselves, if I'm holding up happiness, what do I have to practice in order to get happiness? What kinds of things do I need to say? What kinds of things do I need to do? How do I practice achieving that? If I want love, what do I need to practice to experience love? Giving love, yeah. I need to look at this focus and keep my focus there. It's that focus that's going to draw me to it, that's going to give me the ability to focus and practice enough to move into that target and actually hit it. But like I said, the first thing was desire. And I think sometimes when we think we want something, we end up with something else. And I'm going to read again from Martin Luther King because I thought he said this really well. We proclaim our devotion to democracy, but we sadly practice the very opposite of the democratic creed. We talk passionately about peace and at the same time prepare for war. We make our fervent pleas for the high road of justice and then we tread unflinchingly the low road of injustice. This strange dichotomy, this agonizing gulf between the ought and the is, represents the tragic theme of our human earthly pilgrimage. And then he talks about the teaching of Jesus and this idea of forgiveness and the role that forgiveness plays as we're moving from focusing on this target to this target. And if you know the story, Peter asked him, well, how many times do I forgive somebody that's sinned against me or hurt me? Do I just do it 7 times? And Jesus' answer was no, 7 times, 7 times. And Martin Luther King's interpretation of that, in other words, forgiveness is not a matter of quantity, but of quality. A man cannot forgive up to 490 times without forgiveness becoming a part of the habit structure of his being. Forgiveness is not an occasional act, it's a permanent attitude. Permanent attitude. And then further down he says, only through a creative love for our enemies could they be children of their Father in heaven, and also that love and forgiveness are absolute necessities for spiritual maturity. Love and forgiveness, absolute necessities for spiritual maturity. So if we take then, holding on to my bone and my rightness and substitute spiritual maturity, love and forgiveness, what then do we practice to achieve that which to me is more of my divine purpose? How I want to be, how I think I'm meant to be in this experience of walking this human life. And so, like I said, I think sometimes we think we want something, but if we dig a little deeper, we find that we really desire something else. And since classes are going to be starting, I thought I'd give you a taste of one of the exercises we do in class. And I don't know that this is actually out of power of your word, but it fits what we're talking about this morning. So you're going to need a partner to talk with. Really quickly, just look at somebody near you and pair up and then let me know if somebody doesn't have someone to talk to. We've got us, Edie, you want to go? Here we go, okay. We got, let's find you somebody. We got two. Okay. Can you go over with Diane, Robin? Thank you. You need somebody. We've got 3 in front of you. So, oh, no, two. Mary Lynn, can you step in? You're with him. Here we go. Okay, we've got it. Is everybody paired up? Leslie, do you have somebody? Skip. We got to get Skip in on it. Okay. And I know, okay, so now what we're going to do is decide, raise your hand if you're A. One of you has to be A. Okay? We need the A's. That makes everybody else B. Okay? So we got A and B. Now, when we do this, and it's only going to, I'll have the A's do it for a minute, and then we'll switch. This is not about telling a long story. This is not about B coming up with ideas and trying to solve the problem. And some of you who have been in class with me might have done this before, but it's always good to do it again. So A, all I want you to do is think of something you want in your life and just make the statement, I want, and complete the statement. And when you've done that, B is going to say yes, and what do you really want? And that's all they're going to say. And then you answer, and B is going to say again, yes, and what do you really want? And we'll do that for a minute and see what comes up. Let whatever comes to your mind come out as the answer. Okay, so A is go ahead. I want. And if you're doing this on YouTube, find somebody at home to do it with. Keep going. Don't add anything to it. Just keep answering the question. Okay, time. You can stop. Did anybody's beginning want do a little shifting? Yeah. Okay, let's trade. Try and remember, if you want to take a moment to jot that down, you can, and then trade parts. So now B is going to say, I want, and A is going to say yes, and what do you really want? So switch parts. Go ahead and go. Okay, time. Time. Very good. Again, did anybody's original want shift as they went through this process? Did you get to a deeper place of understanding? Yes. Yes. Okay. I know you don't want to stop, but let's refocus. And you can try this. When we do it in class, I believe they give you about 2 or 3 minutes to keep going, but I thought we'd just do it for 1 minute. And as you keep digging, you get a sense of what your deep desire is. What's really under there as you keep going deeper and deeper with answering that question. So thank you. Thank you, thank you. Okay, I want to give you a minute to complete. Some of you had some other thoughts I could hear going on. No, still going. Still going. So how do we then shift and put that desire as our target? How do we get there, and then what do we need to do to practice? So now that you know what you desire under there, what do you need to practice in order to get there? Letting people know what it is. That's a good idea. Yeah, good. So when you start practicing something new, maybe Mary Lynn, and you start a new song, or if you practice a dance step, or if you practice riding a bike, do you do it right the first time? Do you get it there 100% the first time? So then we're making mistakes as we move toward our goal. At least it feels like mistakes. So how then do we move from making mistakes to saying there are no mistakes? We have to transform through practice. Those mistakes become part of allowing us to arrive at the goal. We transform what feels like a mistake as long as we're not repeating it. Like Holmes said, if we just keep going with that mistake, well, it's going to continue to be a mistake. As we use it as part of what leads us toward that goal of being our highest divine self, it becomes part of that process and we can transform it. And again, consider the source. I'm going to read something that Martin Luther King said about transformation. Transforming of the broken remains of a disappointed expectation into opportunities to serve God's purpose is our goal. Yet powerful living always involves such victories over one's own soul and one's situation. And further on he says, our most fruitful course is to stand firm with courageous determination, move forward nonviolently amid obstacles and setbacks, accept disappointments, and cling to hope. Does that sound familiar, Larry? Larry talked about last week. Our determined refusal not to be stopped will eventually open the door to fulfillment. While still in the prison of segregation, we must ask, how may I turn this liability into an asset? So again, consider what he's saying here back then. In the midst of what he was experiencing and the people in his congregation, he was saying, how can we turn this liability into an asset? And so it's that transformation process that shifts once we set a different goal and we keep our eye on that goal. Then the mistakes are part of that process that's leading us there. And that's what transforms them. We turn them from liabilities into assets. And that happens through practice. So for me, as I was thinking about shifting from my need to be right to how do I practice what brings about love, forgiveness, and happiness, I thought instead of saying, I'm sorry for whatever, I could say, I've missed the mark. I've missed the mark of creating a connection between the two of us. Let me refocus and aim again. What do I need to do to bring about a connection between you and I? Or I've missed the mark of experiencing love and forgiveness in this situation or even giving it. So let me refocus, aim again. What needs to happen here so we can experience that forgiveness and that love? And maybe if it's happiness itself, whoa, I've missed the mark on happiness. Let me refocus, aim again, and keep moving and practicing what's going to get me that happiness, that joy, that peace, whatever it is that I've put up here that I want. So I'm going to practice saying, I've missed the mark. Let me focus and aim again. Because we know then that practice makes perfect. And at that point, we can affirm, and that's why I think Holmes wants us to affirm every day, because we know as we affirm it, it also becomes so. So we can affirm with Holmes that, where did his original words? Sorry, I picked the wrong ones. No mistakes have been made, none are being made, and none can be made. And so it is. And so like I promised you, I found a poem, and this is out of the book Love Poems from God. And it's by St. John of the Cross. And this is also using the metaphor of the bow and arrow. And so when I saw this, I thought of David, and I thought it also fit very well with today's talk. It's called The Earth, a Bow. And we'll move from this into prayer. You let my suffering cease, for there was no one who could cure them. Now let my eyes behold your face, for you are our only love. My spirit's body is rising near. This earth, a bow, has shot me. Now lift me into your arms as something precious that you've dropped. My only suffering from this day forth will be your divine beauty, and you will constantly cure my blessed sight each time you bring your face near to mine and call me bride. Do not be sad, my old friends. Look, these wings are finally stretched and laughing. Our souls are rising near to you, this earth, a bow that shot us. Now lift me into your arms, dear God, like something precious that you dropped. And so I know that David was something precious and has been lifted up. And likewise, for each one of us, as we take aim at the divine purpose in our life, as we take aim at a new target that is more uplifting for us, each time we fall, each time we make a mistake, I know we are lifted up as those precious beings that we are. And so just allow yourself to consider what it is that is now the center of your target, the target of your being, that divine calling, that divine purpose. And how bad do you want it? Are you voluntarily choosing to aim for that purpose? And if you choose to voluntarily lift up love, forgiveness, peace, harmony, happiness, joy, abundance, health, what do you need to practice in order to hit that mark? I give great thanks for our friend David, who hit the mark in so many ways through his service as a fireman, through his service here at the center on the board, and as the service that he gave each person he befriended. I give thanks that he is now flying free and has set an example, a high mark, for how to walk this human life. And I give thanks for each person here, still walking this walk, showing up every day. And I give thanks for every new target that has been established today, knowing full well that we are endowed with the strength, the purpose, the focus, the devotion to achieve hitting the mark, because we are part of that creation, and so it is.